here right now with Evelyn Kung. She is the Clinical Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's here to answer your questions. I don't even remember. I know we were getting ready to address this first question that came in from Dubai. A viewer wrote in and said, my daughter is 13 years old now, and she is high functioning. My question is as follows. My daughter talks a lot, but her conversation skills are very limited. She would talk about her favorite cartoon character nonstop, My Little Pony, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Disney's Descendants. As these are not exactly age appropriate, I don't think she's able to hold an interesting conversation with her peers. She goes to a mainstream school. Please advise, how can I help her increase her conversational skills? Also, I'm currently using skills. What part of it should be my most focus? Lastly, how do I transition the current skills to skills living, which we've talked about here on the show, a very new thing that is for people about the age of 13 or so and on up. It focuses on skills that you're going to need for real life stuff. So as I said, Evelyn Kung is here with us, and she is the Clinical Director of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Great question. What do you want to say?
It's a great question. So many times we think that these conversations are that they don't know how to talk. But really it's the pragmatic language, the social conversation piece that's missing. And so within skills, the language curriculum is purely the fundamentals of language, making sure you have all the different parts of language, syntax, all of that. But when it ends, you move to the social curriculum because it's social pragmatic language that you're really interested in. The fact that this child this teen can talk about her favorite things is less has to do with the fact of like the way that she's talking. It's more the fact of how interested is she in. You know, It has to do with the cognition part, the perspective taking part. And in order to have a conversation with your peers, you have to have some understanding of what somebody else is thinking or feeling or responding towards what you're saying. So at the beginning, we talk about knowing people's desires, what they want, what they don't want. But pretty much if you go through development, you start to understand what are people's preferences. What do they like to talk about? And a lot of times our kids come in with a highly focused interest on their own topics, and they have zero interest in somebody else's topic. And that's the reason they can't carry the conversation. It's not the pragmatics or that structural of taking turns and things like that. They know how to do that if it's a topic that's interesting to them. Yeah. But it's more of the cognitive part, the perspective taking part that's missing. They don't know how to observe and see that, oh, that child is always talking about animals, so they must like animals, so now I should talk to them about animals. Or if that person's always wearing the color blue or always has, all their clothing has sports logos on it and backpacks have, team names on it, then that person is really into sports. So that might mean that they like to play sports, but they also might like to watch sports, and maybe their family is into sports. Yeah. And so it's the ability to understand like other people have other preferences, and then the ability to say like, okay, if I want to talk to them about My Little Pony, I somehow have to make my topic morph or be close to that child that likes to speak, about animals, or I have to understand what they know about, animals or sports teams or other information so that I can find some level of similarity. Yeah. And be able to bridge what I like to what they like, and then be able to talk about what they want to talk about.
And we all do this on a regular basis. Some people have more skill at it than other people, but usually it's because they cultivated the skill. And so we have the ability as parents and teachers to help our children cultivate these skills. They're really written into skills very distinctly. And as you said, there's the social language curriculum, there's the cognition curriculum. In fact, Skills now has 4 different products. There's the Skills Regular, right? Mm-hmm. There's the Advanced Cognition, mm-hmm. Which is what I'm going to talk about in just a second. Then there's the Skills Living, which you said that you would be interested in figuring out how to transition to that. And then, of course, there's the BIP Builder, which is in
all of them.
In all of them, but yes. You can get just the BIP Builder on its side. But the Skills Cognition curriculum is particularly great for those teens, especially in the early teen years, when it's these kinds of things that you want to work on. For the kid who can't get their backpack together in the morning and get out the door, it's great for them. For the kids who just, it's like they've got a lot going on, but they just can't get to the success socially and conversationally, it's great for them. They don't need all the other stuff that's in skills, right? And maybe they don't yet need all the stuff that's in skills living, but skills living also has those things in it too.
Yeah, we made sure when we were building Skills Living that we knew that there were two types of kids that were using it. The ones that were more challenged and had less language and communication, and then the ones that, you know, had a lot of communication and maybe school was easy for them, but the social aspects of life are hard for them.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you come into Skills Living, you kind of choose your path. You have access to everything, but you can kind of choose your path on what difficulties or what areas that you want to work in, as opposed to regular skills where you do this assessment and developmentally and see where they land and see where the deficits are. In Skills Living, people can pick and choose.
Yeah.
Like, I want to work on my social skills. I want to work on vocational skills. I want to work on just how to organize myself. You know, so in Skills Living, it's arranged so that people get to choose what they want to work on. You know, you can focus on an area, do a lot of it, then move to another area if you want. And it'll give you all the hints about, like, well, so this is a social conversation that we're having, and it really hits social skills and also cognition and a few other areas. So it'll give you some hints, like, you can't stay just in one curriculum to work on this skill. Because when you do get in that social interactive part of life, it does take 1,000 skills, from organizing and planning my thoughts to be able to communicate with you on a subject, to what do you like and what do you know already, to, okay, I'm in a noisy place, I need to really talk loud.
Yes.
You know, so it's being able to move accordingly. And I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of the kids that are high functioning, is they want the rules. And initially it's very easy. There are a ton of rules that you can follow, and it's very clear and simple. But when you get into social settings where I have to think about, who do I know? Who am I talking to? What do they know? What's my relationship to them?
Yes.
You know,
it gets
like,
complicated.
It gets really complicated. Where am I? You know, do I know this person well enough to ask this question?
Right.
You know, it's just there's this.
And sometimes you can go down that checklist and go, okay, I'm in a bank and I'm talking to a grandmother and I know that she really loves the Dodgers, so I'm going to bring up the Dodgers. But grandma's upset about something else, about the Dodgers not doing well, and so the conversation still tears apart, and then you have to repair and find a new tactic, right? So it takes a certain amount of perseverance and being able to notice whether it's working. You make all these assumptions and you go with your best guess, and sometimes it isn't it, and you have to back up, reevaluate, and then come again. It's very complicated.
Yes.
But our kids can get to it.
They do.
They really can, and they do on a regular basis. So to answer her questions, in skills, this would be the social skills curriculum and the cognition curriculum.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit of EF
maybe
too.
some EF into
the executive functions in there. Now to answer because I don't know the answer to this, how, when somebody has been using skills, how and at what point do they transition to skills living?
Okay, so one thing that actually we've been working on, and was working on right before I came in here, was being able to, we're actually in the process of trying to figure out how to transfer their building, that you might be able to just transfer everything that you have in skills over to skills living. Okay. So you're going to actually have everything that you introduced in skills in the skills living part.
Very nice.
So that you might not be able to make changes to the older things that you've already done, but you will have access to the 16 curriculum areas in skills living. And what that adds on is the vocational, the community, you know, joining the community, readiness, and all of that. So it really works on getting people to function in everyday life and choosing, you know, what do you want to focus on. We have some vocational areas that we're building. We're actually trying to grow it. We're releasing Skills Living, and it definitely has content, but what we've decided to do is, everybody was asking for this so much, that we have the basics in there, and then there's continual additions that will be growing. So even in the vocational area, which is what the adults are most interested in, and the teenagers too, that have decided, okay, we're leaving school, whether it's at 18 or 22, I'm leaving school now, where do I go? So now I need to figure out how to get a job and, what areas am I interested in? So we're trying to put some really basic areas that a lot of our kids are interested in and giving them ideas about, what questions to ask, where to look, and, what path.
Okay. So what I'm hearing though is that as of today, they're working on being able to make that transition. So if you've got a skills account you want to get to skills living, give them at least a week or so, and then we'll get back to you on.
Well, you contact your skills representative.
Okay.
And they'll tell you how to do it and what timeline.
Okay.
They're already doing this.
Okay. All right.
They're already merging and putting things together and transferring accounts. So if you are external to CARD, just contact your representative. And then if you are within CARD, this is probably something that's going to happen over the next 3 months, most likely.
Okay.
So
spectacular.
Yes.
Okay. I want to move on to another question. How do I convince my child they need friends? My 14, soon to be 15-year-old son was diagnosed with Asperger's at 3 and has always preferred to be alone. I've tried to tell him he needs to make friends and have even forced him to take social skills classes, hoping it would help. Nothing I try helps. He says he doesn't want friends and is now starting to have meltdowns whenever I tell him or it's time for him to have a social skills lesson. I've tried everything, but he is so non-compliant about making friends. He gets straight A's in school, but just refuses to interact with other teens.
There's hope. Okay, definitely. Right now, the way that we view relationships and the way that a lot of our kids on the spectrum view relationships is completely different.
Yeah.
A lot of our kids on the spectrum view it, if they've had a lot of forced teaching, it almost becomes a negative thing. It's very aversive at a certain point because they don't see the need for relationships. When you and I talk, we get enjoyment and social spontaneous enjoyment and reinforcement to keep talking or sharing. For these kids, you're going to have to actually look at their activities. You're going to come out at a different way. And this is actually a lot of men out there. I've had a lot of autism moms that have kids with grown and just laugh and just say, women get together a lot of times, and this is generalities, to talk and to share, and that's what's reinforcing. But men get together to do the ultimate parallel play. They go do sports, they go fishing together, they do activities together, and that's what's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And if they are talking, there's a specific subject they're talking about when they get together.
Yeah.
Especially the academics. I know somebody who gets together with all his friends from grad school, and they do math together. None of them are mathematicians.
Oh, funny.
But they do math together, and that's how their friendships come along. They literally go to dinner and bring some math problem, and they all work on it together, and they share that. And for me, that's crazy.
Yeah, for me too.
But that's how they get together, and those are all their social relationships. And these are men in their 50s who have careers, who are very successful. They all have PhDs.
Right.
But they do math together.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be what's going to happen. Your son, you need to find someone, and all you need is one friend. You don't need a ton of them. But you need to find, if he's really good at math, you need to find someone that's really good at math that almost offers something to him so that he can learn something, and that he realizes that, by sharing this time with you, I actually learned something, and there's something to gain from this. And that's the reinforcement that's probably going to be the most rewarding to him.
Yeah.
So we've had kids, we have kids who love tornadoes and love to classify them and all that. And a lot of these kids, actually, they don't meet the friends that they really hang out with until they're college level.
Yeah.
Because that's the time when you have the freedom and your population increases. Because you can go and find probably another physics person who's interested in meteorology, who's going to be able to share your love for hurricanes or tornadoes, and maybe you become a chaser with them.
Right.
Or you go and you meet that professor that is really into some process of chemistry because this kid likes the way this works in science.
Yeah.
But it's that kid, you need to go on the interest level.
Right.
And somebody that's as interested in him. We've had kids come in here that were at CARD previously, and it's their senior year, and their parents are trying to get them to suddenly their grades go down because what they've realized is nobody has anything to offer them in school anymore. and they're just not interested anymore. Right. But it was just like, no, you're going to go to college and you're going to meet people who are going to have that same level of interest. It's just that in your population of your high school of 500 or 1,000, it's different from the 15,000 or the 30,000 campus, where you can find that person that might exist there and be the friend. So a lot of times we encouraged a lot of these kids to, the parents, to start looking outside, whether it's in community college or even in college level, to say, like, is there a math club? Is there a robotics club? Is there something else? Because the chances of your child actually making a connection with that person will increase tremendously. High school, everybody's changing what they're interested in, and they're really not that our kids are not on that social level where they're that interested in what somebody else is doing this weekend.
Right.
You know, in terms of football or whatever, you know, the activity is. That you're going to go on the interest level, and the person that they make friends with might be 10 years older than them, but if they have that interest, at some point, your child's going to be old enough.
Right.
To be able, and it evens out, and they start finding that person, and they don't need a lot of friends. They need one or two, and you know, that's enough for them, and they'll start to see, like, these other people have other things that they have in common with. Right now, the commonality is it's so small, you know, in high school.
I find myself thinking about the fact that there's 2 shows on television right now that address this in different ways. On ABC, we were just talking about this before, they have The Good Doctor, and it is a young man who is a savant, and he's a doctor, and he's not good with relationships, and he doesn't have friends, and he's trying to make friends with people, and he's not always being successful, right? But you see him every once in a while make a connection with somebody that's both meaningful to him and the other person. And it might be interesting for you to watch that and you know, and see what you like about it, and sit down and watch it with him, so that there's something. We know that video modeling is a very interesting way of showing people, now see, you know, he's like you, and he doesn't have friends either, and it's not the end of his world, but oh look, he made friends with her and now he likes that. Might be a, you know, a non-aggressive way, rather than trooping him off to the social skills class. And then the other one, which is entirely up to you whether you think that you and he are ready for this conversation, Atypical on Netflix, is a high school student who's on the autism spectrum, and he has a friend at his work, but the friend talks about sex nonstop. And at one point, mom gets together with another mom who has a son who's on the spectrum. And the main character says, you know, I have nothing in common with him. I don't want to sit and talk with him. And she's like, find something in common. And they sit down to have a conversation, and they try to talk about everything. You know, do you like this? No. And they can't have a conversation until one of them brings up sex, and they're teenage boys, and they begin to talk about sex. And if your son is ready for that kind of a conversation, I have to tell you that watching the show with my son opened up a world of discussions about things that I don't know how we would have found a chance to talk about otherwise. But it also deals with that whole concept of, what do we have in common that we can talk about? Mm-hmm. What do we have that we can bond about? And they were both talking about the fact that, you know, they did not know how to get a girlfriend, and how were they ever going to get into this circumstance, and that they wanted to know more about it. And it's hilarious and fun. And I also love, in that particular instance, the young actor that is playing the friend on the spectrum is also on the spectrum and has been on our show. Yeah. Anthony Hawkes. So it's hilarious and fun, and you're supporting. But make sure that you watch, because there's they don't mamby-pamby. When they talk about sex, they go there. So if you're not ready for that and your son isn't, take note. But in any case, good luck. Good luck. It's a very interesting world. Okay, we got a question from a mom who says, "Dear ma'am, is the if the GFCF diet works, can we give rice in his diet?" And I think that's a pretty, you know, rice is not gluten, so you can, although we find that some of our kids are reactive to rice as well. Mm-hmm. But she goes on to say, my son is mild, high-functioning autism, very good in studies. My problem is to fix his behavior, that he wants to wear the same clothes every time, and first remove his shoe from his right foot. If we teach him something different, he slaps us. One thing is important is to wearing anything from other relatives, and that he that he is at the point now where he is commanding other people to wear clothes of his choice. Like he shouted, "Wear red, please." And she says, "Please help, losing my son every day." And so
this has so many layers on it.
Right? Doesn't it just?
This just has so many layers. The kids they like their routines, and there's some comfort in it.
Yes.
You know, there's so much that changes in their world that a lot of these kids, especially the high functioning kids, understand changes. A lot of them are anxious too.
I was just going to say, this screams anxiety to
Yes,
me.
it's so much anxiety. And basically, they're choosing their clothes, and the way to do things is a way to control their world.
Yes.
It's a way that they can put some control. And I mean, there's so many layers. There's no way I'm going to answer this to help your son right at this moment. But, you know, from the behavior analyst world, you need a good behavior analyst to help start to slowly teach him how to change routines and to be more flexible. But in the same line, you want to offer things where he can have full control.
Yeah.
He needs some place in his life where he can have all the control for himself, but show him you can't control other people.
Yeah.
He's trying to do it right now because he's trying to get other people to wear red or to wear the clothes that he wants. But this is him screaming, saying, I need some control, and I'm going to get control in any way that I can figure out possible.
I completely agree. And I've said before on the show that I have OCD, and that after when we were like 2 years into therapy with CARD with my son, I had a bit of a meltdown, breakdown period in my life where I didn't understand it at the time, but there was nothing that I could control. Like everything that was going on in our lives was outside my ability to move the pieces on. At least that's how it felt. And so when that happens, at a certain point, your anxiety goes up so much that you start to try to take control over anything. Yes. And I was driving myself and everyone around me crazy because, it was, you can't leave this here. It has to be here. And if it isn't, then everything else has to stop. And it was serious business with me, and I didn't recognize it, and I couldn't get myself out of it. And finally, my world just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller because I couldn't control other drivers on the road. I couldn't drive my car anymore, and then I couldn't, go out of my house. I became agoraphobic for a period of time. And the only time I would leave my house, thank goodness at that point we were doing home therapy, so the therapist came to us. And the only time I left my house was to come to clinic at CARD. And I started to feel like that was all my life was ever going to be until finally, we got some help. My husband is fabulous, and we got cognitive behavioral therapy for me. And in the process of that, I got to the moment with my therapist where I realized, here's what's really bothering me. And it really isn't about this, that, and all the other things that I was freaking out about. And as soon as I did, it was like, and then I could do all the things. It was like a light switch. I could do all the other things. But I feel, and my husband and my son can notice now, when I start to get anxious, when everything starts to pile up, little bits of OCD slip in, and I go, what am I really anxious about? What is it that I feel like I don't have control over, that I feel like I have to control this? And if I can get to that moment, great. But for a kiddo who's on the spectrum and a teenager and dealing with all the teen hormones, I don't think it's realistic to think that we're going to get him to understand that. But I think it's important for us to understand that that's really what's going on.
Yes.
And that I know what it feels like firsthand on the inside, and it's really, really unpleasant. Mm-hmm. And when I felt like, there's that thing that I don't have control over, but I have control over all these other things if I choose to, but I don't have to obsess about them, it was like being let out of jail.
I would never have known.
Really?
Yeah.
You look at me and you don't see that?
No, I traveled with you, and I know I would. You're so good.
And I drove, and I was such a spaz, and you guys had to talk me through it. We were driving through Houston, and I was like, you guys, I would never have gotten to the airport if you guys hadn't talked me through it, you and your daughter. No, I'm very capable in some things, but there are some things that I really struggle with. I think like most people, but in any case, hugs to you, because I know you could talk to my husband and my son. It's not fun when you're next to the person who's like, you need to do this. There are certain things that my son and my husband just accept now, that I'm going to say something. My mother never could accept this, but like I would say to my mother, now when I leave, I want you to make sure you lock the door. And my mother would say, am I 70 and stupid? Like I would not, like, why do you not trust me? And I would go, oh, this has nothing to do with you. I need to say it because that's the only thing I have control over. I don't really have control over whether you lock the door. So if I say it, then comforting. I feel better. It's comforting. So, and my husband just goes, yes, and never takes it personally, right? So I want to encourage you, don't take it personally. Don't wear red. But all the things that Evelyn said, give him as much control as he can to quiet his inner stuff that's going on. Because, being a teenager is about not having control.
Yeah. It's not control. And a lot of times, even for, neurotypical kids, they don't know how to gain control either.
Yeah.
So they need some guidance and they need some structure. Yeah. A lot of times, teenagers are always losing things, and you kind of have to go in and say, okay, here's a scheme that you could follow, and that's just enough for them to take it. And then for our kids on the spectrum, you are a little bit more intrusive because you might have to tell them the exact order, but then realize that, okay, if this is an order that you're teaching, if they're doing a routine for a self-help skill, you let them have it. Because that is an area where if you want to choose to brush your teeth a specific way, he can have all control and nobody's going to say anything about it.
Right.
A lot of the adaptive skills are where we give them the control, and it's okay for them to dress a certain way, but as long as they're able to accommodate the weather and everything else.
Right.
But it's a lot of times the adaptive skills are the routines where we tell the kids, okay, this is where you have full control. You'll take care of yourself just as long as you're getting from point A to point B. You can do it any way that you want, and if you want to do it in the exact same way, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times that is where we give them the control, and then because we can't control social situations.
Yeah.
We can't control everybody else in the family.
Yeah. But if you think about from the start of the day, I mean, I'm not so old that I can't remember being a teenager. I remember being a teenager, and from the start of the day, all the things where you were at the mercy of somebody else and their schedule and their decisions, and just started ticking them off.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is.
I mean, as the mother of a teenager, it has been hard for me because sometimes I'm at the mercy of his schedule, and I haven't been at the mercy of his schedule before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except when we were doing therapy, which, right? And then I was. But now I'm at the mercy of his schedule, and I don't like it. It's not, I completely understand now why people get excited when their kids get driver's license. I've never understood that before in my life. I've been like, why would you be thrilled about that? Because then you got to worry your car's gone, and you got to pay more insurance. Why would you be thrilled? And now I get it because I'm a professional chauffeur. But my point is, when they go to school and there are bells that ring that say you have to go and do this at this time, and you don't get a choice, and you don't get to go to the bathroom without raising your hand. I mean, I hate that about our school systems. I get it because it's how they keep control.
Order. They need order.
Right? But I don't think any of us would want to do that. When I was teaching college for years, and then I went back to teach high school for a couple of years, and they asked me one day what I thought should be included in the new packet for the new teachers coming from somebody who was relatively new back to this. And I said, you should give them Depend undergarments. And they said, why? And I said, because it's the only job that I know of as an adult that you don't get to say when you go to the bathroom. You have no say whatsoever. You have to be on somebody else's schedule for when you use the restroom. It's horrifying. And the kids are all that way. And the teachers who don't allow them to have water on the desk, oh please, we're out of time. I've digressed. And we lost a bunch of time to not having the internet. But thank you for coming and being
You're
here
welcome.
and answering the questions. We always adore you.
You're welcome.
And please give our love to your family.
Thank you.
You're fabulous girls.